Welcome to the Lost Boys, the Found Fathers podcast. I'm Gabriel O'Sullivan, and joining me is my co-host and friend, Will Haycox. We are men who have suffered the loss of a child, and through this production, we desire to offer encouragement, strength, and hope to our fellow brothers who have traveled the same journey. Morning, Will.
Good morning, sir.
And good morning, Websternet world. So, Will and I are opening a new series called Gifts in the Grief, Wrestling with James 1. And because of the title and because of what's happened this week, and I know we're not supposed to date our shows, but we can't not, as a podcast primarily to men, we cannot not recognize Hulk Hogan passed this week.
It's just yesterday, I guess, or day before yesterday.
Yeah. So R.I.P., one of the greatest
Good
wrestlers. I wasn't really a WWE fan. I was more of a definitely NWA, which became WCW fan growing up, being from the South down here. Like we're in South Carolina. That's what we watched. Like honestly, I thought WWE was kind of too fake. Like it wasn't real wrestling.
It wasn't real wrestling.
It was production. They had all the fancy uniforms. But you could not like the Hulkster. I mean, he was just larger than life. I think he did a lot of good things for the sport, or for the entertainment, or whatever you want to call it. I think it's both.
Yeah, they moved quite a lot, so you could call it. Let's just call it sports entertainment.
Yeah, that's good. Right. Yeah. Absolutely, sports entertainment. Absolutely. So, that was tough. Tough to hear, but. Yeah, R.I.P. Hulk Hogan. R.I.P. the 80s. It seemed like the 80s died this week. Hulk Hogan died, Ozzy Osbourne died, and Malcolm Jamal Warner died. Like, those are some icons.
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm roughly, not quite 10 years younger than you, but about 10 years younger than you, I guess. And I watched wrestling for a while, like from middle school age, maybe through like early high school. And I guess I just... I got old Hulk Hogan, so I had the end when he was still trying to do wrestling, but he was probably in his 50s, and so it was like Ric Flair, he wrestled till he's 70 something. But
yes.
He, I don't know, it was interesting. You have a bump randomly where it'd be oh, here's Hulk. He just shows up, and you see all the old videos. And I was mid 2000s was when we were into wrestling, and so it was the John Cena era, or I don't know, they were trying to bring back Generation X and Triple H and all of that stuff, Triple H and Shawn Michaels. And so there was some of that, and then the Hulk would show up randomly. But yeah, it was almost for that 8-year period I was watching wrestling, I never actually saw him as a wrestler, an active wrestler.
Yeah.
But you just knew it was, when Hulk showed up, it was, oh, man, this is cool. It's almost like when Stone Cold would be talked about, or The Rock, or some of the legends there of the 90s wrestling. So, yeah. But, yeah, R.I.P. Hulk.
There we go. So, that being said, we had to do that, because how could we be a podcast for men and not talk about that? And, yeah, I guess also, Malcolm Jamal Warner, loved that guy, loved The Cosby Show, growing up, watched it all the time. That ended up usurping Magnum P.I. for me. When The Cosby Show came on, it was in the same time slot as Magnum P.I.
You had to choose.
And I had to choose, man.
What do you mean, you didn't have DVR back in the day?
We did not have DVR back in the day. We did not. So I had to choose, and I watched Cosby Show a couple times. It was funny, and I was I'm watching that. So that was a hard decision. It was a really hard decision.
It does sound like a hard decision. I watched a good amount of Cosby Show. I've only watched a little bit of Magnum P.I., but it's tough.
It was. Magnum P.I. was amazing. Loved that show. Loved the car. And, but, yeah. And then Ozzy, that was, that dude, what an interesting person, obviously. Praying that he eventually came to faith.
That, are you going to bite the head off of a bat live here on Facebook Live?
It could happen. There's probably bats in my ceiling somewhere. I'm quite sure of it, actually, here at the office. But hopefully that's not going to happen today.
But if it does, we'll give you more notice so you can jump on and watch.
There you go. An hour when I was in college, me and my buddies, we actually did an interview with Ozzy Osbourne.
Really?
We did. So we had, one of them had this 2-disc set, CDs, again, dating myself here, CDs and not having DVR. But one of the CDs of this 2-disc set, there was like an interview with Ozzy, and so we decided to like use some of his responses to some of those questions and make up our own questions.
Okay,
and
great.
so we would ask
like
the question, pause it, and then do his answer,
like
and that was our answering.
It's creative.
Yeah, it was our answering machine recording. So when you
Okay.
called and we weren't there, you would get this answering machine message of us doing an interview with Ozzy Osbourne.
That's pretty great.
And dude, it was so good,
That's
bro.
great.
If
I
we
was sitting there thinking, like, man, how often did he come through Spartanburg that you interviewed him?
yeah, it was amazing.
That's pretty cool.
I wish we still had that, man. So
And not to further digress, but the last thing I want to say to date, even though I'm only in my 30s, to date, me and you, is I found out we have a lot of interns at our company, and I found out apparently anyone under like maybe 30, definitely 25, don't really know what voicemail is. Don't know what answering machines are. Don't really use voicemails. So apparently, if your phone doesn't do the little, which I guess mine does, but I don't use it, the little like translating a voicemail to a text,
Yeah.
then they just pretend voicemails don't exist. So apparently that's a thing. Apparently, like I was raised in the 90s, and so like you call somebody, you get their voicemail, and it says, "Hey, this is so and so. Leave a message, and I'll call you back." And you say, "Hey, this is Will. I called you to borrow this. My number is this. Call me back." Apparently, that's all lost on them. They're like, "Why would you leave your number? They have caller ID." I'm like, "That's true, I guess."
That's true.
But yes, all right. So 6 minutes in, but I just wanted to say it's disappointing that these young kids don't listen to their voicemails anymore.
Man, that's funny, dude. That's funny. So, all right. So, yeah, we're going to get into the actual episode here, right? So, James chapter 1. So, here's the kind of why we're doing this. Again, it's going to be called Gifts and the Grief. And so, I was doing my quiet time this week, and we were in James. And James chapter 1, verse 2 through 4 says, "Count it all joy, my brothers, when you meet trials of various kinds. For you know that the testing of your faith produces steadfastness. And let steadfastness have its full effect, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing." So I was like, all right. And then you go on down, and later in the chapter, and verse 17 says, "Every good gift and every perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of lights, with whom there is no variation or shadow due to change." And so I'm sitting there thinking about it, reflecting on it, and I was like, wow. So here we go with James talking about how we consider it pure joy when we face trials. And then later he talks about every good and perfect gift is from above. And so it kind of made me recognize and realize that trials and challenges and difficulties are gifts from God. Or we couldn't consider them to be pure joy. And so, but it's like, man, how in the world can something that's a trial, a difficulty, a challenge, a persecution, like a very bad thing happening in your life, how can that be good and bad, at the same time? And so that's what kind of made me think, and that's kind of what we're going to discuss and flesh out today.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a loaded question, or just a loaded topic that you're saying how is something good and bad, and in the moment, we're emotional creatures. We want something, and we want to clarify that something is all bad or all good. I think a lot of people are like black and white. Like, this was a terrible situation. This was, if you go on a picnic with your family and everything's great, you have a good time, you'll have fun, and then all of a sudden, thunderstorm, ants all over your food, and one toddler decides to go crazy and starts screaming and crying and kicking and making a huge mess, and you have to pack up and leave. You want to say, well, that was a bad picnic. It's like, well, most of the picnic was good. You just had a bad end of the picnic, or you had this. So I think we do the same sort of thing in life, that, like you say, if we lose our job, or we're having marital trouble, or we lose a child, or any situation that comes in our lives, we want to look at it and say it was all bad, nothing good came from it. I wish I could have just avoided it entirely. But to the point that you're mentioning there, and from James, those are things that we can learn and grow from. And we'll talk about it later in this later in the series, but we're also being perfected, and the Lord is using the way that we grow from our grief and the way that we react to our grief as a witness to Him.
That's right. And it, it makes me, so we've got, this question, how can we both hold both joy and pain? And, man, it makes you think of Rob Bass and DJ Easy Rock.
Of course it does.
Of course.
Yeah. First thing that pops in my mind.
Right. So, go back and listen to that song, Joy and Pain, Sunshine and Rain. Okay, so there's some theology in 80s rap. I'm just saying, there can be. So, again, we like Will said, we go through a situation, we think, oh, this is only bad, right, or this is only good. But a lot of times it's not. It's a little bit of both. And we know that we have to make that choice of how we're going to see it. How we're going to see the situation. When it says like this, I read today, it says, count it all joy, my brothers. Mm-hmm. This is from the ESV. You mentioned in the NIV, it says, consider it pure joy, my brothers, when you face trials of many kinds. And so, what James is saying here through the inspiration of the Holy Spirit is that we have the opportunity and we have the choice of how we're going to see a situation. Mm-hmm. And so it's not that it's just happening and we have to accept it as it is, because our mind can tell us one thing, but that reality could be something else, right? And so we have to we have to choose to look for that silver lining in difficult times. We have to make a conscious mental choice of how we're going to see a situation right there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like, like if you have friends that are in an argument, you can say, there's your side, there's their side, and there's the truth. Mm-hmm. And so there's always something outside of the reality that we perceive, and not saying that any weird way, but the way we see things isn't always true. It's almost like if you watch a movie and it's following this one character and you're seeing everything from their perspective, it's like, man, this is really bad. Those people over there are the bad guys. And then it goes back and shows you the other perspective, and it's like, oh, these people are actually trying to help, but they have to just do it in a certain way that they look like the bad guys, or that you're not getting the whole story, and so you're getting something out of context. And so I think anytime we're going through grief, it's like you have tunnel vision, obviously, because everyone's limited to their own perspective until they go out and gather more information. And so you're going through, let's just say, losing your job. You've just lost your job, and that could mean, now you're starting to wonder how we're going to start paying our mortgage, how we're going to, 3 months from now, our emergency is going to run out and we're not going to have money to do anything. But the Lord could have, it could have been a bad situation for you and your family. And so you needed to go to another place. It could be that the next job you have is going to be a better opportunity and a better place for your career to grow. So there's plenty of ways that the Lord can be using something that you can't see how He's using it until you get on the other side. And like you said, the mindset is important of choosing, hey, I want to be faithful to the Lord through this. I want to try to be content in these circumstances. And like you said, consider it joy. Choose joy and hope in the situation, rather than sitting there and just saying, oh, woe is me, everything is bad, and God's not faithful, and I don't know where I'm going to go from here.
Yeah, and I love you said choose joy. It's not that we feel joy. Like, if something bad happens to us, we talk about child loss a lot in this show, obviously. It's not like we're like, oh, that's awesome. Mm-hmm. Man, I'm so happy that my kid is dead. Like, no, we didn't feel that way at all. But we had to figure out eventually how to choose. Like, okay, we know God's promises are true. He says, consider it pure joy when you face trials of many kinds. So I have to decide that I'm going to choose to have some semblance of joy even in the midst of this grief. And that is hard. It's not easy. It's a fight. It's a struggle. It's a mental thing. It's a heart thing. And we have to figure out, how can we have joy? How can we choose that joy in the midst of this very challenging situation? Again, joy doesn't mean that you feel amazing. It's just that you're deciding that, hey, I'm going to see that there's good in this, and I'm going to trust in God's goodness, and I'm going to allow that to impact the way that I live and the way that I think and the way that I talk. And that joy can be over circumstances, right? Happiness is kind of like different, right? Happiness is like this situation that we can, you eat an ice cream, you're feeling happy. As Jerry Seinfeld says, then your ice cream falls on the ground. You're like, oh, this day sucks, right? And you're like, 1 second it was good, the next second it was bad. But we got to be like, well, at least I had ice cream, at least for a little bit, right? And so we have to decide what we're going to choose, because in the end, we have to actually maybe continue to choose that, so that way our feelings can eventually catch up to what we're saying. Not necessarily fake it till you make it, but a little bit like that. Okay.
Yeah, and it's not like fake it till you make it, because you're not. I guess the fake it to make it has this idea that like you're doing something, or you're in a situation where you're not qualified to be doing that thing, and you're just kind of pretending that you do, and you're deceiving people. But in this context, it's not about deceiving anybody. If anybody, you're trying to trick, quote unquote, yourself, but it's not so much you're tricking anybody. You're just training yourself and training your mind to trust the Lord, and to go to a place where, I don't understand, I don't see the immediate benefit here, but I'm just going to trust that you know what you're doing, and I'm going to do what is the right thing to do, is to trust you. And it's, say you want to go work with a personal trainer, and they have a nutrition plan for you. You can trust, hey, this person's job, and this person is trained in helping me get in shape and lose weight, and this is the diet plan they have and all of that. And you can go into it asking a whole bunch of questions with a bad attitude. I don't know why you're making me eat this, and I can't eat that. Or you can sit back and say, hey, there's a plan here. They've laid out this plan. I don't know what the whole plan is. I don't see the exact same vision that they have for me. I know I want to be in better shape, but I don't know what that looks like, what the calories are going to be, what the workout sessions look like. And you're choosing, hey, I'm going to trust here, and teaching yourself, I'm going to trust them. I'm going to trust them, so that when you have a cheat week, or when you have whatever, like say they're on vacation for 1 week, you've trained your body to do what you need to do, so that when you feel like you need this snack, or you feel like you don't want to go work out this day, you've already set that plan in motion. You've already chosen in your mind that this is good, and I can trust the one who's made this plan. And so by the same token, if you are stopping and saying, like you said, you're not feeling joy. If you're sitting there and you're saying, well, this doesn't feel good, I don't like it, it must not be good, you're going to miss out on the training that you're doing to your mind and to your body to say, I don't understand this, it doesn't feel good, but the Lord said, all good things come from Him, and that He can use all things and turn them to good. So you're trusting that He's going to use this situation, whatever the situation is, for good. And then you're talking about the spiritual aspect of going through suffering and being sharpened by that like it says in James here, this suffering, this grief, this pain that you're going through is ultimately make you rely on Christ, and it's building your hope and your trust in Him, and producing endurance. And so it helps you the next time you come up to this situation.
Yeah.
And you can help, like as we got to know each other, you went through this before me. You went through the same situation of losing your child, and you were able to trust in the Lord, be built in your faith. And when it came time that my wife and I lost our child, you were there. You had already, done the training. You were further down that training regimen, and you could come in and say, hey, this is what I did. This is how the Lord helped me through it. I'm going to bring you alongside. Where if you had not been faithful and you had just rejected that training, or like the idea of the personal trainer and nutritionist, if you just said, no, I'm good, I'm going to do it my own way, then when the next guy comes along in the gym and says, hey, Gabe, can you help me out? You're like, well, I could have, but I didn't prepare, so no, I can't. I don't know what to tell you. Mm-hmm. So your faithfulness led to being able to help the next person trust the Lord and get into that same training regimen, if you want to use that metaphor.
Man, that's a great example, dude. And I think that, highlights that verse 3, for you know that the testing of your faith produces steadfastness. And then verse 4, and let steadfastness have its full effect, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing. And so, like you said, there's a reason and there's a progression in this situation, right? And just like you don't go to the gym and unless you're me, you don't start off benching 450. Like you got to start at the bar.
24-inch pythons over there.
That's right. You got to start with the bar and then work yourself up to adding all those different plates. And this is the same situation when we're going through difficulties, trials, tests. And I love. I'm gonna look up real quick also, like in regard, it's very similar to that James chapter 1 verse 3 through 4 that we just read. But when we look at Romans chapter 5 verses 3 through 5, it says this. It says, where's verse 3? Okay, not only that, but we rejoice in our sufferings, knowing that suffering produces endurance, and endurance produces character, and character produces hope. And hope does not put us to shame, because God's love has been poured into our hearts through the Holy Spirit who has been given to us. So again, really similar language right there. This from Paul in Romans, but really similar to what James was saying, in that, like there's this progression of learning and this progression of our faith where we have to allow these difficulties to play out, but we have to keep going through them so that way our faith is developed and our faith is refined.
Yeah, and for us, not to minimize our circumstances, but we can lose our job and go through a little bit of lean times and then find another job, or we might have marriage difficulty or a little bit of our friends don't want to hang around us because we're being faithful to our church. Like we can go through things that are really bad, or we can go through things that aren't as difficult or don't matter as much in the grand scheme of things, but they're still painful. But if you think about the people that wrote this, James and Paul, and what they're saying and the suffering they went through, like we know that Paul was thrown in jail multiple times.
Yeah.
His life was threatened. He was stoned to death or almost to death at least once. He was ultimately exiled and he was executed by Rome. And he had the opportunity to say, okay, well, I'm not going to deal with any of this. I don't like this. I don't particularly enjoy being in prison and being threatened with death and beaten to death. I'm just going to renounce, and I'm just going to go back to being a good Jewish man, and I'm going to turn away from this Jesus guy. And all of his suffering could have ended, and it would be as simple as him just saying, yep, I renounce my faith. And instead of doing that, he continued to not just go through some mild persecution that somebody doesn't like you or some of your old friends don't want to hang around you anymore because you're that Christian guy, but he actually was persecuted and ultimately killed, along with many of the disciples. That Peter was hung on a cross, and so there was several disciples. I mean, early Christians were killed in the arena in the Colosseum, burned, just tortured in so many different ways. And so I'm not minimizing our life now, but I'm just saying if they were able to be faithful to death and they were actually punished with death, we should look at that example that they set and say, they were faithful in the worst circumstances in a true life and death situation. And there's people that are going through that today that are missionaries or believers in foreign countries that if they get caught with the Bible, at the very least they're going to prison, and who knows what else is going to happen from there. And so we should be able to see that and say, not that our problems don't matter at all, but in the grand scheme of things, whether we get a nice cushy job or we just get one we can barely get by and provide for our family, we're still blessed in that situation. We still have a home. We still know that we're not going to be arrested for going to church in the morning. And just look at ourselves in the grand scheme of what it means to be a Christian, what it means to not be of this world and to go through persecution, and know that no matter what the situation is, Christ is there. Christ has done it himself. He railed against the authorities of his day and was ultimately condemned and executed and was raised from that. And he knows what it is like to suffer, and even asked the Lord, take that away from him, but was faithful unto death, even though he wanted anything but what happened.
Man, that is a great perspective change, right there, or opportunity to have a different perspective, because we can sometimes, I'm certainly guilty of this, of like getting on this pity party of, oh, poor pitiful me because of what I've gone through in my life, or blah, blah, blah. And then you think about what you just said with these, our brothers and sisters, even today, more Christians have been persecuted and killed in the last 100 years than ever in the history of mankind, of the 2,000 years prior, and I mean, even I listen to Jocko podcast a lot, and he talks about how, over there when they were fighting in the Middle East, the bad guys, we'll call them, that were in these terrorist organizations, they still today take Christians, burn them alive at the stake, boil them in oil, and peel their skin off in front of their families. And so this awful stuff is still happening to Christians across the globe even today. And so the things that we're going through, while they may not be good, and like you said, we're not trying to minimize them, we also need to keep that perspective as well, and realize that, wow, if this word can apply to that awful situation, how much more can it give us encouragement and hope to get through what we're going through? Because we're probably not going through something like our brothers and sisters that may be in a different part of the world right now are going through and suffering for their faith. So, man, thank you for bringing that up. It's a good perspective change today for certain.
Yeah, and I just say, here, kind of wrapping up this first episode, what can we learn when we're tested? When we're tested to a moment where we feel like we don't have an answer, that you're not prepared for this test, you weren't expecting this test, and now you're just completely defeated. And I would say, for us, the obvious answer, knowing what we've been talking about in this podcast, is, when you don't have anywhere else to turn, the only answer is to turn to the Lord. And if you continue to try to do it by yourself, you're not going to get anywhere, because you've tried everything that you know to do. And I think I've told the story. I know I've told the story on the podcast, but to say it briefly, we lost our son in September of 2019, and kind of through the beginning of October, we were processing everything. We come back home. We had 2 dogs, and we were just having a hard few days. We had a theft out of my wife's car, and I don't remember, less than a week, week and a half, excuse me, after we came home from the hospital, one of our dogs got out and was running down the street, and I couldn't catch her. I didn't know, where she went or what was going on. And so I was screaming for her, and it was just I cried in the hospital when we lost our son, but then kind of since a week or more past there, I was just kind of numb and, didn't feel, I guess, all the pain, everything, the frustration building up. And when we lost her, she went in this little area that I thought was fenced, but, didn't know if the backside of it was fenced. I couldn't see it. And basically just sat down and broke down, and I was just screaming Lord, why? We've lost our son. We got picked on by somebody that wanted to steal some purses and lost some important things out of there, and now we've lost our dog, and I can't do it. I can't catch this dog. She's faster than I am, and we've lost so many things here in a short period of time. And I just remember thinking, only thing I can do, I can't catch her. The only thing I can do is just pray, Lord, bring the dog back. Just give us something, in this moment. Just don't let us lose her. We had her for multiple years at that point, and I can't handle losing anything else. And just sat there for a minute, I don't know what to do. I'm going to have to go back and tell my wife, we lost our dog too. Yeah. And as I'm getting up to go back towards the fence that I climbed under to go after the dog, she just comes running up and stands beside me. Wow. And just kind of walked up, and she's like, all right, I did my exploring. Now I'm done. I'll come back home. And so I just grabbed her by the collar and took her right back to the house. And it was just like a small moment of faithfulness there that is as silly as it is to say, I was crying over losing our dog when we had just lost our son. Just that compounding loss and lack of control over the whole situation. And then to answer the question I started with, like what I learned in that situation is the Lord is the only one to cry out to, that there's nothing else. There is no other strength left. In that moment, I'd lost so much that I didn't have anywhere else to go, and I didn't know what we could do, and reached out to the Lord, and he was faithful, not just to bring the dog back, but he was faithful in giving me peace and being the refuge that I needed.
Man, that makes me think of, I'm just going to kind of jump in this, that was an incredible story. And again, how God is, he's going to meet us when we need him. Because he's a good father. Just like we are dads, right? And we wouldn't think of like not being there for our kids if they're crying out to us and need us. And God's the same way, right? So he wants us to cry out to him. And so do that. Like, don't think that you got to isolate. Psalms 34, verse 8. I just actually went to the wrong verse, but it's a great one too. I'm going to read it first. It says, "Oh, taste and see that the Lord is good. Blessed is the man who takes refuge in him." That's what you were just saying you were doing, man. Mm-hmm. You were taking refuge in God. And then verse 18 is where I was trying to go. "The Lord is near to the brokenhearted and saves the crushed in spirit." So the thing we got to remember here is that we're not saying like don't like that you're like weak, or like it's not normal to feel grief or to feel pain or to hurt. That's not what we're saying at all. We're not saying that you just like put up this front and act like everything's good when it's not. Like consider it pure joy. He's not the totality of the Bible is not saying like, oh, don't be sad, just be happy. Like the Bobby McFerrin song or whatever. Like that's not what we're.
Be happy.
There you go, man. Dude, I made Bobby McFerrin reference and DJ Easy Rock and Rob Bass today. We were crushing it with our 80s music here today. That's not what God's saying. Like verse 34:18, again, the Lord is near to the brokenhearted. What that's saying is you're going to go through times where you're brokenhearted. It says he saves those who are crushed in spirit. Guess what? You're going to be crushed in spirit. There's a whole book called Lamentations in the Bible that's just these laments about of the authors pouring out their heart about their sadness and these deep hurts and things that they're experiencing. Read through Psalms, you'll see the same thing. Jesus wept, right? Over Jerusalem, over Lazarus. So we see that it's okay to have emotions. It's okay to be sad. But we can take comfort that when we are experiencing those difficulties, that when we cry out to the Lord, he will meet us. He will be our comfort. He will be our strength. He will be our peace. And that we don't want to like gloss over that. Don't think that if you had enough faith, then X, Y, or Z wouldn't necessarily happen to you. Don't think that if you had enough faith, you wouldn't feel any pain, or you'd never be sad, or you'd just always be happy. Like, that is not what the Bible tells us. And so it's okay to feel those emotions. Just turn to the Lord when we feel them, and we ask him to be our comforter and our healer and our peace. And he will. The Bible says he will. And we know it because we can testify to that. And I'm sure that if you're listening, you've experienced that at some point in your life if you sit back and think about it. So to close out this episode, this is a pretty cool quote. It says, "Joy is not the absence of pain. It's the presence of Christ in the middle of it." Now, I don't know exactly who coined that quote, but I love it, and so we're using it. And joy is not the absence of pain, it's the presence of Christ in the middle of it. So let's remember that, and then on the next episode, we're going to flesh out even more, like, what does it mean for God to be the giver of perfect gifts? And again, how does that even relate to, considering it pure joy when we face trials of many kinds? So anything you want to say in wrapping up? If not, make sure you follow us on the socials. Certainly shoot us any kind of messages about things you would like to discuss. If you've got a story that you want to testify about God's goodness, if you got questions about what we talked about, email us, message us. You can do all those things through social media. Lost Boys to Found Fathers. And then certainly make sure to check out my books online, Every Little Thing, 6 Small Steps to Perfect Peace. or my first one, Thy Will Be Done, trusting God in the midst of suffering, pain, or loss. Thank y'all for joining us today. Let's not be lost. Let's be found in Him.